Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Are you ready, Stacy?
I'm watching a very slow bar
Oh.
crawl. Okay,
Okay.
we are live.
Am I still on?
Yes.
You're on.
What did I do to lose everybody?
Well,
Are, are we expecting any of our alternates besides Paul?
now Zach called off because he's doing some EMT stuff, and Matt Goring sent an email that he couldn't make it.
And your new member, which is a potential board member, will be letting us know tomorrow.
Weren't they supposed to be appointed at the last meeting, the organizational meeting?
It was announced. The position was announced.
As open.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll try to do this without. Do you guys still see me or just hear me?
Yes.
We see you.
See you too.
Yeah, see in here.
Feel so disadvantaged.
It may be the AI program is blanking you out.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. If you don't mind, let me try.
Also, there's someone behind you.
Get one of those screen masks on. Be careful.
Yeah. Is that a kitchen knife?
I think so.
I don't know what I did, guys. If you don't mind, I'm gonna try to get back in.
Got it.
Oh wait, maybe. Oh man, I am so technically a wizard. All right,
Your kids would disagree.
nice to see you. I had a patient about my age today try to think that I might not know what streaming was and was trying to figure out what word that I would understand as far as but anyways, let's call the meeting to order 7:02 Franklin Township Planning Commission, January 4th, 2024. And I see there's 6 attendees. We did not have a December meeting, but we should still have had some minute meetings, right?
That's right. I was going to bring that up because we did have minutes going back like 6 months ago, which ran through Stacy. We submitted them to the board for comment, and there was a few comments. We made those, put it back out, and it was approved informally. You remember that, Stacy? That goes back like 6 months ago. That was when
Yeah.
you first started, I think, or more maybe.
Right.
So it's the last meeting, and I don't remember which one it was, but it's got to be 6 or 9 months ago. But we did have minutes for that meeting, and we did go through that, and we agreed to it. And maybe we should do is bring it up for the next meeting and
Right.
deal with it then. But I think we all agreed to it. We'll have just 2 sets of meetings minutes to talk about the next meeting.
So if we could put that on for the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay. I guess I skipped over public comment. Probably there is none. Then first order of business is nominations. We have a template that's in the handout if we wanted to follow it, but first would be receiving any nominations for chairman.
I make a motion to nominate Dr. Dave Hoffman as chairman.
Like deja vu.
I'll second.
Um, all in favor of that nomination? I guess you have a second. Do we have any other nominations? Would anybody else like to be chairperson? Sorry.
Uh-oh.
I think you all know my pronouns by now. So being no other nominations, all in favor of the nomination of Dave Hoffman for chairperson, say aye.
Aye.
I,
And is that only two? We need three.
No, that's three.
that's
Oh,
it.
okay.
You have a vote too.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll vote yes. Thank you.
I don't.
Next would be nominations for vice chairperson. Chuck, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to nominate Dr. Mark Harris for vice chairman.
I'll second it.
Any other nominations? Being none, all in favor of Mark Harris as vice chairperson, say aye. Aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Thank you for muting Mark at the right time.
I didn't mute, just kept my mouth shut for once. Thank you.
Great, moving on, secretary. Chuck,
I make a motion to nominate John Gontars for secretary.
I'll second. Any other nominations?
We should put Matt Goen into the category just to scare him a little bit.
Hit him when he's down. All in favor of John as secretary, say aye.
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 I,
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, being none. Stacy, I guess you'll make the right notations for that.
I will.
Moving forward to our business, pedestrian walkways and sidewalks. Was anybody at the last supervisors meeting that they addressed sidewalks and pathways? I had a conversation with Jeff shortly after that. And if I could paraphrase, it was, well, if the planning commission wants to look at that again, let them look at it. Maybe I'm totally off in terms of what our charge is at looking at sidewalks and pathways. Does anybody have a better understanding?
So I've been thinking about this since Jeff righted us during our the last time we discussed this. I think it was actually in the ad hoc committee. So we started all this process because we have verbiage for sidewalks and we're tired of just simply ignoring the verbiage and pushing on. So the question is, what is pedestrian access 2.0 look like as opposed to sidewalks? So I believe that's our task. I also believe I have maybe an idea how we can move forward, but does that sound like our task, Dave?
I think John and I also had some communication about it, and if you wanted to chime in, John, before. But my understanding was, I kind of had this understanding that they couldn't get past thinking of a 4-foot wide concrete walkway along a road. And I understand that we as a township would still want to be able to say yay or nay on that. sidewalk. And I think they wanted to make, and looking at the information that's been shared with us, and knowing at least where our previous group of supervisors have looked, they wouldn't want to deviate too far from our advisors, which PennDOT and Natural Lands, everybody likes concrete for a sidewalk. But it didn't get into what we were trying to address. One is pedestrian access globally, and then what we looked at a year ago with trying to develop pathways instead of just looking at a sidewalk. And I think that's what John shared with me was, I don't know if the supervisors were looking at it as creatively as maybe we wanted to, or we thought we should.
You know, if you look at the stuff that, you know, the paperwork that Jeff sent us, 100 and some odd pages, I skimmed through it, didn't read it through word for word, but the message it's kind of giving is that the ADA requirements say you've got to have concrete. And if you're going to have concrete, you're going to have 4 to 5 inch concrete on top of 5 inches of compacted gravel. And it's going to be typically 4 to 5 feet wide. And it's going to have expansion joints at certain distances and things of that order. And the maintenance is going to be up to the homeowner. Cleaning is going to be up to the homeowner. And that seems to be the definition of a sidewalk. So if we look at a sidewalk, that's what we've got to look at. I don't think we have any wiggle room there. When I look at some of the other documents that are included in the document that Jeff sent, Butler County, Section 608, there seemed to be a pretty decent compromise in that I think they recognize that you really only have sidewalks on high density developments. And what I mean by high density is, to paraphrase them, they're saying 4 dwelling units per acre, which means you're going to have 1/4 acre size lots. But then that's also a bit of a problem in that, because the other thing they say is the lot frontage for the sidewalk has to be equal or less than 75 feet. So what they're saying is that they don't want to put in sidewalks longer than 75 feet for which a homeowner is going to be responsible for the repair and maintenance. That's kind of what I'm reading between the lines if you read through the document. And if you read through some of the other ones, they kind of go along the same way. They kind of don't actually get as specific as this. But if you take the 4 acres per unit and say you don't want to have more than 75 feet of sidewalk, and you want to have 4 acres of 1/4 of an acre per unit, you're talking about 580 feet of depth for a 75-foot frontage, you know, which is a 7-to-1 ratio, which you're not going to have in our township. So the only place it might work would be like a cul-de-sac where you can get that kind of frontage because it fans out to the back, and it's an issue. It's not an issue, but the only place you get 75 feet of frontage is in a city lot. I know when I was brought up in Boston, our lot was 60 feet by 80 feet, and our sidewalk was 60 feet, and that was it. And where I've seen sidewalks, that's what I typically see them, except when you have a business involved. You have a business involved, you have a bigger sidewalk. So maybe if we frame the thing and say, use wordage like this to at least frame the situation for concrete sidewalks, then leave that and then go on to walkways as not being concrete, but something else. That might help separate the two issues. I'm just struggling for a way of putting it in there to give us some flexibility, but not limiting us every time we go through a development subdivision.
So I want to stop the concept right now that ADA requires concrete. That is in no way accurate. The state make some pretty big mistakes in their interpretation of federal law. And I've actually had projects where PennDOT was involved and it was as screwy gets. There's no reason why it needs to be concrete. It just needs to be a smooth surface. And for that matter, there are, you can definitely do a bituminous, but you can also, as far as ADA, so the idea that everything would need to be fully ADA accessible would indicate that Fair Hill can't exist. Which, there are so many places, it would indicate that national parks can't exist because they have trails that are not ADA compliant. There are roads that we have that are too steep. So we do need to concern ourselves with it to a point, but to simply say we need to have concrete because of ADA, we shouldn't continue to say that. It's not accurate. And because truthfully, bituminous makes a better surface for ADA than concrete. So I wouldn't go that route. So the idea that we're talking concrete in this area, it just doesn't make any sense. And so, and it's not because of ADA that we would need to reintroduce that.
Yeah, unfortunately though, Chuck, all the documents that we see, whether it be county or state, refer to concrete. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying if we do anything, we have to be in a position to accept that we could get some pushback in case we had a problem because we didn't follow the regulations or the general accepted ways things are done.
We only have two
Have a
state
problem.
roads. I mean, I know we have other roads that are state maintained, but we only have two state roads.
I think to bring it even down to our township level, we would want to make sure that our engineer feels the way you do, Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in agreement with you. I want more creativity, and I don't feel and I agree, every path does not need to be ADA compliant. But somewhere we need to know whether our supervisors want us to look at anything other than concrete sidewalks,
I think that's
and
right.
whether our consultants are willing to go along with it, or whether the supervisors will just hear whatever the consultant tells us.
So my thinking or a thought I had about this is that so it used to be that you could walk anywhere you wanted in this township, and we've lost that over the last couple of decades. It's just no longer a thing. And it's because of what we keep doing to our roads. It makes it harder and harder and harder. So the step to it's hard to do this, to reclaim the pedestrian access. It's going to be hard, as we found out. We've been talking about this for years now, but that it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger because we are not planning for it. We're putting it off, and things keep getting done that make it harder and harder and harder. I think what we should be doing is, at this point, including that planning in new development plans and road maintenance. That's going to be a little tough, whether or not the supervisors say yes on that. But those two items, the planning should at least be involved right now, so that we don't continue to lose ground on projects. They're replacing the telephone poles on my road right now. we should be able to tell them where to put those poles instead of simply putting it next to the existing pole. If it's in the way, we should be getting them moved and put in the proper place today, because it'll be a problem. And so the gap keeps getting larger and larger and larger. Every time we redo an intersection, every time if there's going to be stormwater, all those things keep getting larger and larger and larger. And we would start to see proper planning and proper grading so that the step is smaller, not larger. The step just keeps getting larger and larger and larger on this. That would be what I would like to see us do.
I don't think anybody disagree, I don't disagree with you. I don't think anybody else does. We've discussed actually these points in the past. We've talked about talking to the phone company and having them put the posts back further to allow for widening of shoulders, where it makes sense. And I think Jeff commented on that, and I don't think I heard that was something that we could enforce. It was really up to the telephone company as to where they put it. And so what you're saying, we've said before, and I don't think anybody's disagreeing with you. It's just that so far we haven't been able to push that along.
Well, we've done it. We have done it. It's just not codified. So we've definitely commented on plans and said we would like to see the planning for where a sidewalk would be installed, and we had to use the term sidewalk. But where the sidewalk we're not going to require it at this point, but we need you to modify your grading to show where it would be included, and they had to do it. So we've already done that. But it's not codified. We had to, on one hand, say we're not requiring sidewalks, but on the other hand, can you do us a favor? I think we need to change that verbiage.
Can we codify the movement to telephone poles back 6 or 7 feet from the road edge? I don't know if we can do that, because that's, to your point, that's probably one of the first things that we should codify. And so far, I haven't heard any support from that. I heard Jeff saying that wouldn't be impossible, but he didn't say it was going to be easy either.
None of it's going to be easy.
If you read the documents, the easiest thing to do is to widen the shoulder to make it areas more walkable. Well, the first thing you want to do if you're going to widen the shoulder is you want to make sure the shoulder doesn't go through a telephone pole. So if we're going to start anywhere, we ought to start with dealing with the electric and phone company on the placement of telephone poles in Franklin Township. And I don't know how we do that. It's not an ordinance because we can't enforce it because it's a right of way. So I don't know how we get that done, to your point. They're doing that. How do we change that? I don't know if we've changed that in any telephone replacement in the area. That would probably be a first step. And then
we don't have codification on it, John. So we need to have codification that says there needs to be
codify that?
Yes. Why not?
I'm not sure that we can, because it's a public right of way. I'm not sure we can do that. That would be something.
We absolutely control what goes on in the public right of way.
I'm not sure.
Well, if I take what you said, Chuck, that we only have 2 state roads in the township, then the rest of the roads are township roads. And does the township determine the right-of-ways of our roads? And to your point of road maintenance, are we able to utilize more of that right-of-way or claim use of that right-of-way more, that then pushes when they do put new poles further from the center of the right-of-way? Is there a required width that a township road can be, or can our township determine what the widths of our roads are and how much of a right-of-way we use?
The township, it already is a fact. It already is. So we don't have a uniform width. I don't even know if we've defined. We'd have to do some homework and see whether our code. I don't believe that we've defined we define what a development road will be, but if it's existing, it's existing.
Would a first step be to ask either our legal beagles or our engineers, who are the township engineers, can we ask or require the telephone poles to be put back, let's say 7 feet from the edge of the road, or sorry, I shouldn't say from the edge, X number of feet from the center line of the road. And then it's assuming a road is 10 feet wide for the township road. We add on another 5 or 6 feet of that for a shoulder, which then becomes a walkway. Is that something we can do? So we decide our road widths are going to be whatever they are, 8, 10 feet, whatever we have, or what do we want to put in the ordinance. Then we say we want to add another 4 feet for potential shoulders in the future. If we're going to do that, then that means that we want any telephone that are going to be replaced, that they be put off to the edge of that road shoulder distance. So I think the first thing we have to do is decide on what the road shoulder distance is, and then find out from our engineers and our legal people, is there any way we can force that with the utilities? That would seem to be the first step. Because we can
Well,
talk about it all day long, but unless we can somehow enforce it and codify it, we're just going to be going around in a circle over and over and over.
well, it sounds like you're going to ask 14 questions before you decide to even codify it. I don't know why we can't codify it. But regardless of that, that doesn't, I mean, I don't believe we have any roads with telephone poles on both sides. So we're not talking about in all cases we have a telephone pole in the way. I think we need to plan for this. I mean, we keep kicking it down the road, kicking it down the road. It just keeps getting to be a bigger and bigger step that we can't make. We just keep having excuses of why we can't make it, and it keeps getting harder and harder and harder. I'm not sure what.
Well, do you have verbiage you would want to put in to say the distance that the telephone pole should be from the center line of the road? And then we bring that up to the supervisors and see what they
Don,
say?
you're not hearing me. You're talking about one detail. I'm talking about the concept of codifying the planning for pedestrian access. We used to have pedestrian access, but we keep taking shoulders and whatnot away, and so we don't really have it anymore. We need to get it back. I mean, there's no question about it. It's more important for our health than how fast the cars can drive, to be honest. I don't. I think we need to put it in there to plan. That would be my approach. And
So let's talk about how to approach that from a, we can put that in our minutes, and I think it'll be totally missed by anybody that's not in this meeting.
mhm.
We can ask our engineer to come to our next meeting.
And
And-
certainly our zoning officer would be able to give us information on that too.
Um, yeah, but our engineer would help us to codify it. The zoning officer would then enforce the codification. But either or both. But even before that, I mean, do we try to have a joint meeting? It would mean us going to the Board of Supervisors meeting and having a group discussion. I mean, at one time, I'm going back 20 plus years probably, we one of these meetings a month was a joint meeting, so that we didn't have what I see over the last year and a half, a disconnect between the supervisors and us.
Yeah, normally we have a supervisor here. as an alternate.
Right.
I think your idea of getting the engineer in here and getting his view to see what's possible, then following that up with the meeting with the supervisors may be worthwhile. At least then we'd know what is likely put to be possible. And then bring that up to the supervisor to see if they want to support it. If they don't want to support it, well, then we back off.
I'd like to get a better understanding whether it is only the engineer or who else we could get an opinion from, whether it's legal too, before we have a discussion with the supervisors. I think if we want to try to push this in terms of we still have it, push the concept that we still have an opportunity to not lose all of our pedestrian access. I think we want to have as much information of what can be done before we have a discussion with the supervisors.
I agree with you 100%. I think it's both a legal as well as an engineering issue. And once we've got that, then it's really a decision on the supervisors whether they want to pursue that issue. You know, but if knowing that it's possible will make it easier to go into the supervisors than finding out from the legal side or from the engineering side that we're going down the wrong direction. And that's probably worth having that discussion before we take it forward. So I guess, you know, maybe what we could do is put together a note and could we send that to our lawyer and to our engineer and saying, this is what we'd like to do. Would you be prepared to talk about these, or do you have any thoughts about this before we discuss this further with the supervisors? And that way, at least we might have a little head start at the next meeting where we bring those people into the picture. I'm looking for a way of moving it forward.
I would talk to your engineer first and make one of the questions to the engineer. Does he think there are any legal issues with doing any of this? So that, because one of the problems I had with the historic district ordinance is it was seen as a purely legal issue, and then it got thrown to zoning, and we've gotten stuck there because we just haven't set up, you know, the necessary meeting. So I think maybe one at a time rather than both. Even if it takes a little longer, it'll be a little more focused.
So I think it would be good to meet with the engineer. Even with the planning commission, are we only allowed to have 2 at any such discussion? Does anybody know?
You mean for sunshine?
If we were to sit down with our engineer, could we only have 2 of us because of sunshine?
We're not decision making.
We're not.
I think if you're just posing questions and getting answers and not at that point making a formal decision, even that it's an informational meeting. It's not a formal meeting. It's not a decision-making meeting. You might be able to avoid that.
So the reason I was asking if we try to set up a time between now and the next February's meeting with the engineer, inviting us all, and all of us showed up, we could ask all these questions, but at least to try to have 2 of us, if not 3 of us there.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to have everybody. If we have 2 or 3 people, that's probably more than enough because, you know, we have the question is pretty simple, I think. And if we can get an answer and the answer is backed up, if we needed it in writing, then we could just move forward. That makes
Stacy,
sense.
does our engineer have certain set times? And the code officer does, or do they not anymore either? But
No, our zoning officer has set times, Tuesdays and Thursdays. But the engineer, I'm assuming you're referring to Ron Reagan. We could definitely
No.
try to set something up for that.
Not Ron.
Panoni,
Yeah, it's a Panoni. I
Nathan
should know
Klein.
his- Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely look into that. Jeff is back on Monday, so I will bring that to his attention.
yeah,
And if Jeff wants, he can look at the playback of this meeting and to get an idea of what we're trying to get answered. So that would work.
So, John, to take your question about telephone poles a little more in depth and in detail, there's 3 telephone poles directly across from my street. The right of way is screwed up on that street. So the telephone pole, there's a couple of things going on. The telephone poles are right on top of the road, and it's on an inside corner, so it's a dangerous situation. They're replacing, I didn't know this, but they're replacing some of the telephone poles along Chesterville, not
Yeah.
all. And it has to do with upgrading the electric, since the country's going all electric. Same thing they're doing on Flint Hill. So I got a hold of a representative from PICO, asking them if they could relocate, when they relocate those poles, could they relocate them farther away from the road? They got back to Jeff, and Jeff came out, took a look at it, and he said, yeah, I agree with you. Let's try and get these pushed farther back. So both I asked and Jeff asked. And then the answer that we got was, we're not moving the poles. It's not part of the project.
Yeah.
But they were willing. There was a conversation. There definitely was a conversation. We had no code to back us. So it was a situation where we couldn't say, no, you're violating our code. You can't put in a new pole in that location because it's not codified. We have nothing to stand on. But they were willing to discuss it. And I suspect, I don't know, 50-50, if they were going to put new poles in, they would have listened to us and they would have done what we asked them to do. So there is a process. I mean, they have people that are already set up. There was, 2 people that's their job, is to reach out and talk to townships and homeowners.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
I just
I'm
think,
just saying that I think it's a possible thing.
I think some of the places where they put those telephone poles are too damn close to the road for the situation, and I agree with you 100%. But we've just got to get that.
I have a Charlie horse.
To the put them in.
Drink more water.
Yeah, I've got my electrolytes inside when I go in, so. Yeah, that was a personal experience I had. I feel like they would be, but who knows? I mean, I was doing it as a boondoggle anyways. I didn't expect that I was going to get it moved, but I was curious what would happen if I asked the question.
so we'll try to set up a meeting with Nathan.
Yes.
We have so few meetings, and since the change in engineers, I think we've probably only shared one meeting with him.
He's been in at least one.
Yeah. Any other discussion on sidewalks, pathways, pedestrian access?
It was on one of the pages in all the material that came our way. Apparently, if you call it a side path, it's acceptable to asphalt it. It doesn't have to be concrete. And it also raises the issue of whether some, you know, the other thing is, can some of these things be trails, not sidewalks?
Right. It's interesting in neighborhoods that routinely have sidewalks, the number of people that will choose to either run or walk in the street anyways. And I suspect that is 100% to do with cracks in sidewalks.
I tend to do that when I'm walking and I see cracks in the sidewalk, I'll walk on the street. I do that myself.
And that's why it's actually a poor solution for ADA because
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you what I do.
no, it's
You know, in Westchester, they got some beautiful brick sidewalks, but they're rougher than hell. And rather than meander through those things, I'll just walk on the street.
When I did a lot more running, and this goes back to high school, so it was mostly dirt roads anyways. But I was told that the macadam was softer than the concrete. And whether that actually, I never came across that anywhere in physical medicine. And maybe Mark can either collaborate or disagree with me, but I never came across anywhere where it made a difference
Yeah.
in terms of longevity of your joints or your body or anything. But that myth is, at least if it's a myth, it's out there. If it's a reality, it's out there. And I think that's a lot of why walkers and runners choose the road, which gets back to Paul saying a side path is better than a sidewalk because you can at least make it of a softer material. And I think, like Chuck, you said, it seems like those paths seem to last longer with fewer cracks and have a little bit more give and take in our environment, our freeze thaw environment than concrete sidewalks. But
Yeah, I mean, concrete roads aren't even, it is something that Pennsylvania delves into once in a while, back and forth, but then they put the top coat on. But yeah, bituminous, I mean, it's just a lot more forgiving. But we don't have to worry about that. What the actual application is, we don't even have to worry about that. We're not even talking about actually putting anything in. We're only talking about planning for it, making space for it. And I think that's really important because then a lot of the conversations that we're getting stuck up on, we don't get stuck on them anymore. We don't have to worry about, when you're planning, you don't have to worry about the details of ADA. We don't have to worry about the details of who maintains it, which is a really big issue. I mean, that's huge. Why am I responsible if someone falls on the sidewalk in front of my house, but if there's a horrific car accident, I'm not responsible? Both of them are in the right of way. I don't understand the difference, but it's a quagmire. But we're not worrying about any of that right now.
Stacy, why don't you let Jeff get a few days being back, and then if it might be just as easy for he and I to touch base about what we want to try to achieve with this meeting with the engineer, than to tell him to listen to 45 minutes of tape. And
Okay.
and then try to set something up.
So it was in the supervisors meeting, Dave?
That it was discussed whether to bring this back to us or allow us to look at this again.
Yeah, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, and it's going back we didn't have a December meeting, so it would go back at least 2 months.
Okay.
But I think it's a fresh approach. It's a good approach, Chuck. Because I do think that's where things were getting hung up on the details instead of first trying to create a possibility of improvement.
I'll try to go back and look at that. Stacy,
Yes, sir.
am I still on the board or was I
Yes, you have been reappointed. It's official.
okay. Just wondering how much I want to commit at this point right now.
Understood.
Stacia, I think the last minutes are probably like in February of this year. It goes back a long way. I'll look through my notes.
No, I did the ones in
Okay.
October when you guys were discussing the phrase gill.
I don't remember. I'll look through the minutes, but I have a file of minutes and I'll look to that and give you an idea what month it was. Okay.
Can I, out of curiosity, ask a little question? We, the Historical Commission and the HARB, under the ordinance, are required to meet once a quarter. Do you folks, does the Planning Commission have any requirements as such?
I'm not aware of any.
It would be
I don't know if
buried in
I've
the
asked.
ordinance.
I don't know if I've asked Jeff specifically, are we required to meet so often? I did ask if we were required to meet tonight. And initially he said because of it being an organizational meeting or, we would not have officers for the last 3 days. But even that, he said he didn't think we were required to meet in January.
No, I don't think
Wait.
you're required to have an organizational meeting, but when it occurs, I don't think it's specified. It's just your first meeting of the year.
Yeah.
But no, the only thing I'm at all worried about is if anybody was ever trying to mess with anything the Planning Commission was doing. If you were not meeting a minimal meeting requirement, they might start throwing around trying to pull that into the mess of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Only thing in the back of my head. And of course you could meet the requirement by simply, opening up the meeting, asking if there's public comment, saying that there's no significant business, closing the meeting, and you've met.
The way that it's written is you can meet as needed, as necessary.
Okay, so it doesn't specify more than one meeting, any meeting a year for that matter.
Correct. It has the set dates, but then it says we'll meet as needed.
And that's from where? That's in,
That's on our end. And that's what was approved at the board meeting on the 2nd when they had their organizational meeting.
Yeah, no, you want to, it needs to be in the ordinances somewhere. That's where it would be defined. Whatever
Okay.
set up the Planning Commission would define that.
I can check that.
make sure that supervisors said that with solicitor input and what may be required by a second-class township. I think that's what Paul's getting at, like all the way up to how a second-class township is organized and whether the Planning Commission and maybe it's been done that way. Maybe it is already known and established, but I think we'd all like to just know that it is that we're meeting the requirements of the second-class township.
Well, don't forget though, each month we do send out a note saying we're not going to have a meeting, so it's a conscious decision. So it's not as if it's just lapsing and people are forgetting about it too. I'm not sure.
No, but if it's a requirement, that wouldn't satisfy meeting the requirement to meet.
No,
That's my point. That's something very strange has happened to my. Sorry, I'm looking at the township website and everything looks small.
we're a small township.
Yeah, and we're gonna be a blind township if we try and look at this website on my computer. Yeah, I was just trying to quickly page my way into the ordinances, but I need a bigger screen. Probably can do it on the phone, okay. But it's like I'm getting the mobile site, not the desktop site.
Well, thanks for asking that question, Paul. Any other business? Being none, do we want to adjourn at 7:51?
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Looking
Bye.
forward to a
Bye.
good year.